Scripture reading this morning will be from Exodus chapter 17, verses 1 through 7. Then all the congregation of the children of Israel set out on their journey from the wilderness of Sin, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped in Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people contended with Moses and said, "Give us water that we may drink." So Moses said to them, "Why do you contend with me? Why do you tempt the Lord?" And the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why is it that you have brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children, our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "What shall I do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." And the Lord said to Moses, "Go on before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. Also take in your hand your rod with which you struck the river, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. So he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the contention of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?"
Good morning, everyone. You'll open your songbooks here to 589. I want to look at this song and read that as well before we dive into the lesson. Number 589, "As the Deer." So it says, "As the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs after you. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. I want you more than gold or silver. Only you can satisfy. You alone are the real joy giver and the apple of my eye." And the chorus is, "You are, alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you." This song is something that puts in this frame of mind for us, the necessity for God in our life, the necessity for Christ in our life. And as we've just read this passage here from Exodus, that these people were thirsting, these people were needing water, but they needed more than just water. And God, as we see in this passage, provides for them that water that's necessary for life, just for them to go through every day. But we're going to see that He provides more than just that daily water for them. And I want to also begin, before we go into the lesson this morning, that a story that kind of helps us to frame this sermon, the outline in our minds. And this is coming from a California mother. This story comes from as she's in the middle of a drought, and she's the wife of a farmer, and her husband is going to tend to the fields and tries to make sure that there is enough water supplied for even the land that they have. And the drought that they were going through was, they were he was having to drive to some place where they had a water depot, and he would have to collect water from there and bring it home. And everyone was paying real close attention to how much water they were using, because they needed to have enough water just for their fields to survive, so that way they could have a harvest and all those things. And one of the things that they had done to help with cutting off their water supply, or maintaining and saving some of that, was the outside spigot had been turned off, because their son, whose name was Billy, had gone outside and was just playing, just left the water faucet on and just let it go. And it was just running and running and running until, mom and you hear that sound. I'm sure any parent has ever, walked through your house and you're like, "There's water running. Why is there water running? Is there a toilet going? Is there a spigot outside on?" And so she, in a frantic, goes out, finds this, and corrects little Billy. And then they take precautions, and they go and they shut that spigot off inside the house. They turn off the water supply there. And if you've ever messed with plumbing, not all of those, shut-off valves are precise. They don't always get everything stopped. And she noticed, as she was about her chores, that she noticed Billy coming back and forth between the tree line and the outside, around where that spigot was. And so she investigates a little bit. She starts kind of watching from afar, from a distance, and she sees how he goes, and he spends several minutes just cupping. He has the spigot fully turned on, and it's drip, 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 dripping. And he spends all this time filling his hands up, and then he cautiously, precariously holds that water in his hands as best as he can, and it's dripping along the way. But he takes this handful of water, and he goes back into the forest. And so she follows him at a distance. She trails him, and she sees what he's doing. Why is Billy doing this? Well, she sees and is immediately, distraught because there are these deer, and there's a buck there that has its antlers and everything. And he's taken this, but they didn't notice that there was a fawn there. And so he gets down on his knees and he gives that fawn some of that water. How beautiful story this is. And so she sees this, and so she doesn't reprimand Billy. She instead follows him back home and goes inside and gets a pot filled up with water, and then they both together, and she gives it to Billy, and because the deer have already placed their trust in him. And he goes and he gives that water to the deer. Now, how beautiful a story that is, and how self-reflective we can think about that. Who do we play in that story? Who are we in that story? Am I the deer that's panting for that water? And that deer obviously needed that. It was just laying there and not able to get up, to go and find a source of water nearby that its mother and father would know about. It wasn't able to, it didn't have the strength to go and do that. And so I think about the Israelites here in that situation, right? They're kind of that fawn, right? They need that water. And then there's others that are playing the part of Billy in that, and that sometimes we make mistakes and we get punished for that, but we still have to try to do our best with whatever we have. And then some of us find ourselves in the place of that mother who, didn't want to, punish Billy or do any of those things to him, but she had to conserve water. They had to do that for the sake of their survival as well. But there was that mercy that she then said, needed to be shown to that fawn through Billy. And so we find that this story can kind of help us to frame up this lesson this morning, in that the Israelites are desperate for water. The people really needed it. They absolutely needed that water that was being provided, the water that they were kind of whining and complaining that they needed there, right? They needed that water. They needed some supply of this. They're in a wilderness, for crying out loud. This is a desert area. And I don't know if you have ever been in a situation before where you're going out and you have a very limited amount of water. I've been on a backpacking trip with Kayla, and it was an easy one, but we planned it on the worst part of the year where it was super hot out. And it was actually the hottest day where she ended up getting off the trail the day before. Mom came and rescued her, and then I had to call and get a rescue the next day because it was just so hot that my water supply, I just could not, it just wasn't helping me any, it felt like. It was so hot that I was desperate for not just the water in my backpack, not just the water from the creek that I could get with a life straw, but also I needed to have the full cure of, AC. Okay, I guess I'm too pampered. I needed that AC. It was way too hot out there for me, and I was desperate for some cold water. But anyways, as I think about that and how hot it was, even just yesterday, the kids went, Emma and Quinn and River, they all went to the park to play for a little bit, and I gave them a time frame that they could go over there for, and they came back early, not because I called and said, come on home, or not because of the wind picking up. It was because they ran out of water and there wasn't water there. So they came home because their water supply had ran out. And here, these people, the Israelites, after being in bondage for 400 plus years, they're out in this wilderness and they're going about this journey. They're starting this off, and they find themselves in need of water. They need it for several reasons. They need it physically, right? Because physically speaking, we all need that water. We all need to stay hydrated. As soon as you start to feel, this is something that someone told me that, I wasn't ever big into sports, but I had a friend who was, and he came into, it was during my Burger King days, and he came in there and he was just sitting there just drinking water for about an hour and a half. I'm like, what are you doing in here? He's like, I'm just rehydrating. And he's like, and he explained to me a little bit about how long it takes for the organs to be rehydrated. I don't remember all the details about it, but I do know this, that it takes about 20 minutes for you to start drinking water and for it to go through your stomach and into your intestines and start to be absorbed. That's pretty quickly as far as your system's concerned. Now, a caveat to that would be that if you start drinking soda, he's like, I'm not going to drink soda because of the extra things that have been added to that water. It changes it, and then it actually has to digest further. It can't be digested in the small intestine. It actually has to process through there all the way to the next stage, and that's where it becomes more absorbed. So there is a need for water, an absolute need for water. Not all this other stuff that has been tainted, but pure water. And that's what they were needing. They needed something that was pure water because of the challenges that they were going through. They were going through emotional challenges where they needed some form of acceptance. They needed some form of intimacy. They needed forgiveness. They needed reassurance, right? Imagine the things that they're going through as they were in Egypt. Remember, I guess, their start in this, that they had been placed here, and we know the story of Joseph, and how he was well blessed, right? And his whole family was taken in. And there was a little over 100, I think, if I remember right. 70 to 100, something along those lines. Either way, his family was brought in, and they go from this small family to millions of people. But over the course of time, they kept losing more and more of their rights. They became slaves. And they were in full bondage. And they were desperate. They needed this physically, they needed this emotionally, but most importantly, they had been disconnected from God. They needed this spiritually. And as they needed this spiritually, this righteousness, they needed meaning to their life. They needed that purpose in their life. They're desiring that. That's what they need. And as we see, God provides all of those things for them. Later on in Exodus there, we'll see that not only does he provide them with water, he provides them with food, he provides them with direction, he provides them with the tabernacle, which is what the little ones were studying this morning, provides them with a tabernacle that they can carry around with them, a place for them to connect with him, a place for them to worship, for them to get that spiritual water. Well, I want us to know, as I'm sure we've already read it up on the screen there, that our soul needs it too. Their soul needed this water. Ours does too. We need this nourishment just the same. In John chapter 4, verses 10 and verse 14, it says, Jesus answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life. So we see that we need this water, and if we understand what this water truly is and the benefits thereof, we would chase after this. And looking at that passage, you see that she takes that water, she gravitates towards that. She wants that water, and as a matter of fact, she desired it so greatly that she turned back around and went to her village and went and told everybody about this living water that they needed. Our souls need it too. Are we actively going and trying to find this water, this source? Are we taking it in as we should? Because oftentimes we find ourselves in a dry and desolate place, and we need to be refreshed in this. We need to have refreshment. And how do we have that refreshment? In 2 Timothy chapter 1, let's open our Bibles up to a couple passages here. Let's turn to 2 Timothy chapter 1, verses 15 through 18. It says, this you know that all of those in Asia have turned away from me, among whom are Phygellus and Hermogenes. The Lord grant mercy to the household of Onesiphorus, for he often refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chain, but when he arrived in Rome, he sought me out very zealously and found me. The Lord grant to him that he may find mercy from the Lord in that day, and you know very well how many ways he ministered to me at Ephesus. So here is a way that Paul is saying that he was refreshed, Somebody came to him, sought him out, and refreshed him. Turn over, should be just a few pages, to Philemon in verse 7. Philemon in verse 7, it says, "For we have great joy and consolation in your love, because the hearts of the saints have been refreshed by you, brother." Talking to Philemon, you have refreshed the hearts of these saints. We need to have this same thing. This is, in my mind, this is where Billy is kind of taking place, right? That story we talked about a moment ago. Billy is taking those drips of water. These individuals are taking those drips of water that they have access to, and they're going and they're taking it to somebody. Well, these drops of water throughout the week, throughout the day, throughout the year can sometimes be just us going to each other and talking with each other, us reaching out to somebody and talking to them, us sending a message, getting on Facebook, even just liking somebody's post can help, because we see that and we're like, oh, somebody actually paid attention to what I had to say. I'm going to call out that Jeremy back there, Jeremy Hall, had gotten a hold of me one time. It wasn't too long ago. He messaged me and he said something along the lines of, "Are you still up?" Because it was like 9 or something, maybe closer to 10. I don't know what time it was, but it was later on in the afternoon. And I said, "Yeah, I'm still up." And he calls me. And he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know about something that one of your kids said in class." And he tells me that, and I'm like, that's really encouraging. I'm really glad that you thought to call and tell me that he was encouraged by the question that was asked, and also wanted me to just, hey, this is something one of your daughters thought up, and this can bleed into a conversation for you guys. That's a refreshing thing, that not only is he, because this was days after it had happened, so he was thinking about this days after and thought to give me a message. Are you awake? Don't want to just call somebody if they're deep in their sleep already. But he calls me and he lets me know that, and that's an encouraging thing. And we can find ways and should find ways to do that as well. We need that in our life. In Galatians chapter 6 and verse 1, it says, "Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual restore such a one with a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted." There are going to be times where we need to be each other's wingman. We need to help each other out. We need to be there for each other. And that's exactly what we should be doing for one another, is being each other's wingman. Helping each other through the struggles of this life. Because when we think about it, we are helping each other out in the facet that God has provided us for each other, right? God has provided us for each other, but God sees our needs in all these things. He sees us in our deepest, darkest pit. He knows where we're at all times. There's no way that we can run away from him. Jonah tried to run away from him. Jonah tried to run like 1,000+ miles away from where God wanted him to go, but God knew exactly where he was the whole time. There was no chance of him escaping. But he sees their affliction. He sees ours. In Nehemiah chapter 9 and verse 15, it says, "You gave them bread from heaven for their hunger, and brought them water out of the rock for their thirst, and told them to go in to possess the land which you had sworn to give them." They had been discouraged during their time in the wilderness because of, the whole reason why they were in the wilderness. They had sent out the spies, the 12 spies, to go into the land, and they had 10 that came back with the bad report, and only 2 that gave the good. They went with the 10, and then even after that, and God said, "No, you don't get it," they still tried to take it by force, and God was not with them. But we see that God still takes care of them throughout all of that. God feeds them, he waters them, he gives them water, he gives them the direction in which to go by the pillar and the cloud and all that. He gives them the commandments to follow. He gives them each other. He gives them each other. God gives and places each one of us in our lives. Everybody that's here has been placed here because of God. Because without him, you wouldn't be here, for starters. And without Christ also, you wouldn't be desiring to be here today as well, to worship God. And he provides us with each other. In Hebrews chapter 12, verses 12 through 15. It says, "Therefore strengthen the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be dislocated, but rather be healed. Pursue peace with all people and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord, looking carefully lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble. By this many become defiled." So We see here that this is what we are supposed to do. Strengthen the hands which hang down, the feeble knees. There are those around us that need this strengthening. There are those around us that need to be encouraged, uplifted, because of their affliction that they have in this life. We all have afflictions in this life, and some of us hide it from others better than others, but we need to be open with each other, and when we see those needs in others' lives, reach out and help. Strengthen the hands. Strengthen the feeble knees. We need encouragement. We need to help each other out. And then one of the things that we do this, if you turn back a page in Hebrews chapter 10, a page or two, starting in verse 24 and 25, it says, "Let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some, but exhorting one another. And so much the more as you see the day approaching." Are we present for one another? Are we there for one another? You know, if it were me and I invited people over for a party, and I'm like, hey, I want to celebrate something. I want to get all this together. And I organize this, and we get everything ready, everything's there, and nobody shows up. Well, that's exactly what Jesus tells us, right? He says that He prepares a feast. He prepares a feast for everybody. And He sends out the message to His friends and to all those people, and He says, come and be with me. And He's disappointed because they all have an excuse. I can't be there. Nope, sorry, not going to be there. Can't do it, whatever. And so He goes out again, and He sends out another request to these people, and they don't show up for Him. And then finally, He's like, we just need to fill our house. This needs to go someplace. This needs to be used. We're not going to waste it. So He opens His house up to just all the beggars and the poor and those that are in desperate need. And He provides for them. Right? Well, did we receive those invitations? I hope, today we're going to be taken off after a little while and going and attending the invitation that was given for us for Marley and her graduation. Are we going to be there to support? Or will she be disappointed? Are we the same way when it comes to church services? Do we go when we ought to? Are we there for one another? Are we present as often as we can be? Or do we think to ourselves, no one's going to miss me if I don't show up? Let me tell you that your presence is missed. Every single one, your presence is missed. So if you have that question in the back of your mind, if you have that thought in the back of your mind, it's not really necessary, or I don't really need to be there, it absolutely means something to somebody in this room when you're not here. It means something to me. I'll tell you just briefly that and it's something that I have a head games problem with. When I get up here and I see people, and then I don't see people, it's in the back of my mind, and it weighs me down a little bit. And so I just want to admit that, because I think about it and I have to deal with that. But it is something that is discouraging. It truly is. And I think often to myself, is that because of me, or is that something else? Am I looking too inwardly on this? And then I have to resolve and figure that out. But I think more importantly, that I shouldn't be making it about myself. I should be making it about God. Are we here present for one another because God has told us to, because God wants us to be? Because God sees the need of His people, and He says they need to be watered. They need to have that spiritual nourishment. And something as simple as being there for one another can provide that water. And that can be good in our service to God, to provide that water for one another. And then we need to take delight in that water. Turning to the first Psalm. Psalm 1, verses 1 through 6. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in His law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he does shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Let's do what God wants us to. God has provided, but He has provided me for you and you for me. Let's help each other out. And we see that the ultimate provision that God has made is that Christ. He has provided Christ for us. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 through 4, it says, "Moreover, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware that all our fathers were under the cloud, all passed through the sea, all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ." So he's saying that that rock that was struck for the people back there is symbolic that this is Christ, the same that is being struck for us, that has been struck for us, that He died on that cross for you and for me so that we can have this everlasting spring of nourishment, of spiritual nourishment. That not only cleanses us, but it hydrates us, it revives us emotionally, it revives us spiritually, because we now have that connection again after being washed clean with God. We have that revival, that redemption where we've been purchased with that. We have been made clean and can be in that relationship with God again. We are His children. Christ always is there for us. That spring doesn't just wash us cleansed one time, but it's everlasting. It's all the time. Isaiah chapter 35, verses 5 through 6, it says, "The eyes of the blind will be open, the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame will leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute will sing for joy. For water will gush in the wilderness, and streams in the desert." And I chose the Christian Standard because I didn't like the way that it used the word for mute there. But what he's saying is, and what we see that Christ does, is that He heals every ailment that's there. The people that come to Him are healed. And He doesn't stop. He doesn't stop healing them. He doesn't push them away. He doesn't shun them. He doesn't stop because of something somebody said or did or whatever. He continues to help them out. And there are times that we are going through this life where we might have been healed at one point. Cleansed, right? Healed of our sin, those things taken away from us by our obedience to His washing of regeneration in His blood. There's some times where we still need to be revived. And it's like a thirst. Time and time again, it's equated to this thirst that, am I running in this marathon, and I'm going through this, and I am just so parched, I'm so thirsty, that my mouth, I don't know if you've ever been that thirsty before, where you've been so parched that your mouth is just sticking together. And even thinking about the most delicious apple pie in your life doesn't salivate anything. It doesn't help at all. And you're still so thirsty that your mouth is just clinging to itself, your tongue to the top of your mouth. In Psalm 119, verse 25, "My soul clings to the dust. Revive me according to your word." We need this revival. We need this water from Him. Until we receive this water, that is it. We are parched. We are it's like this dust. It's this dryness in the mouth. There's been several times that, this has happened to me, but, I think about it this way, that this life has equated to before, that it's like a marathon. It's a race. It's not a dash or anything like that. It's not like a short burst or anything like that. It's a marathon. It's something that takes time to accomplish, a long time to accomplish. That is our life, our entire life. We're running constantly. And there's hurdles in the way, and there's all these obstacles in the way. Can you run all that distance, though? Can you run your entire life without having to stop for a drink every now and again? And if you've ever been on a 5K or a 10K or running any kind of sport at all, what do they always have there for you? They always have these huge, 10-gallon things of water, Gatorade, whatever, something to rehydrate you. And I remember the first time that I ever went to one of those, I think it was the first time we ran was a 7K. And one of the cool things about that is that every so often they have these hydration stations. And as you're running, you can stop by or you can grab one to go. They're often handing them out so that way you can grab them and drink them on your way. Well, I think about it that way, but it's better than that. Because those hydration stations are positioned every so often through life, through that race. But Christ, in this idea, is he's actually running beside of you. He's actually right there with you. And he's right there ahead of you, right there in front of you. That's where he should be. And you're running, and he's handing the water back. He's like, here you go. I know that you need something to drink. Here you go. Take this. And it's ever present. It's always there. It's just within arm's reach that you can grasp that water from him. How much better would that be than to just be running a mile or two before you find a rehydration station? Instead, it's always right there in front of you. That's what we need. And that's what we have through Christ. He has given us this. But do we treat it the right way? Do we thirst after it as we should? After all, this water is ever-flowing. It is life-bringing. Revelation 22, verses 1 and 2, it says, "And he showed me a pure river of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and the Lamb. In the middle of its streets, and on either side of the river was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of all the nations." They were there for the healing of all the nations. And then, if you'll turn to Ezekiel chapter 47, the verse 5 verses there, and it's where this passage is also correlating from. It says, "Then he brought me back to the door of the temple, and there was water flowing from under and the threshold of the temple toward from the east. For the front of the temple faced east. The water was flowing from under the right side of the temple, south of the altar. He brought me out by the way of the north gate and led me around on the outside to the outer gateway, and that faces east. And there was water running out on the right side. And the man went out to the east, and the line in his hand, he measured 1,000 cubits, and he brought me through the waters, and the water came up to my ankles. Again he measured 1,000 and brought me through the waters, and the water came up to my knees. Again he measured 1,000 and brought me through the water, and it came up to my waist. Again he measured 1,000. It was a river that I could not cross, for the water was too deep, water in which one must swim, a river that could not be crossed." Imagine that as you're going through this whole ordeal, mentally thinking about that. You're walking through and you're like, okay, this water, there's so much of it, but it's only up to my ankles. And then you keep walking and it comes up to your knees. Okay, I still can stand on my own. And you walk more and more and you're up to your waist. I'm still fine. I got this. I'm okay here. But then you go even further and it becomes too much. You can't even, there's too much water for you to handle. Think about that. That's how much water there is. You cannot take in all of this water. There is so much water to be given out to those that are in need. Everyone is desperate for this water, and its abundance is clear. But where are those that are drinking it? Where are those that are taking that in? Isaiah chapter 55, verse 1, it says, "Everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you who have no money, come and buy and eat." Yes, come and buy wine, milk without money, without price. There is no price to this water. There's so much of it. We all, I think, understand economics a little bit as far as, there's supply and demand issues. There is so much of this that it doesn't cost anything. And it never will. It will never cost a dime. We don't stop anybody from placing membership saying, okay, well, before you place your membership, you need to let us know how much you make. There's, certain requirements as others do. We don't do that because there's no price associated with this. We don't say, okay, well, we want to set up a Bible study. Well, how much is that going to cost? Doesn't matter because Christ already paid the price. It's free to all. Its availability is to all. It's accessible to all. Revelation 22 and verse 17. What does that say there? Revelation 22 and verse 17. And the Spirit and bride say, Come, and let him who hears say, Come. And let him who thirsts come. Whoever desires, let him take the water of life freely. Simply come to him. That water is there. The water is provided. God, providing water from the rock, vividly illustrates his unwavering provision for his people in the times of desperate need. Right? And provided that physically, it provided that emotionally, it provided that spiritually, provided us all those things, it provided them all those things. But it provides us as well. Because just as the Israelites thirst in the wilderness, our souls also crave this living water that only Christ can offer. And through the striking of the rock, which foreshadows that sacrifice of Christ, God demonstrates his willingness to meet our deepest longings, offering a continuous, life-giving flow of grace and restoration that is freely accessible to all who desire. Let us take delight in this divine provision. It's something that's not provided by anybody here, by anybody that is just a man, but it's divinely provided by God, allowing it to replenish and revive us in our own dry and desolate places, because we're all in a dry and desolate place without Christ. But he has given us access to this freely. So the question is, are you in a desolate place at this moment? Do you need this life-giving water? You can accept this today by coming to God through Christ, who has provided everything for you. If you have put on Christ in baptism and find yourself still longing for this, we want to help you. We want to be there for you. And we can be there for you through prayers. We can help you through prayers if you need prayers of the congregation. If you need study, let one of us know and we'll gladly study with you. We'll help you as best we can. Because just as freely as Christ has given it to us, we freely want to give it to you as well. Will you be obedient to the gospel call today? If you have need of the water, please let us know by taking a seat on the front as we stand and sing.